Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this session, I'm going to talk about Chaucer's most popular work, the Canterbury Tales. Before getting into the session, do subscribe my YouTube channel and get the updates about the upcoming lectures. Yes, the Canterbury Tales. This tales opens with an introduction of each of the pilgrims. They are on their journey to Canterbury to the shrine of St. Thomas Becket. These pilgrims are included a knight and his son, the squire, and the knight's yeoman, prioress, a second nun, a monk, a friar, a merchant, a clerk, a man of law, franklin, and a weaver, a dyer, carpenter, a tapestry maker, and a haberdasher, a cook, shipman, physician, parson, miller, a mancipal, reeve, summoner, pardoner, the wife of Bath, and Chaucer himself. So these are the group pilgrims who were going towards shrine of the St. Thomas Becket. Here they assembled at the Tabard Inn. The pilgrims decided to narrate story in order to pass their time on the way to Canterbury. So this event was hosted by Harry Bailey, and he was the one who was hosting the event. He announced the rules for narrating the story, that each of the pilgrims will have to give 2 stories on the way to Canterbury, and the remaining 2 stories have to narrate when they are coming back. So together it should be 4. Everyone has to give 4 stories. This is the rule which is passed by the host Harry Bailey. The host will decide whose tale is best for meaningfulness and for a fun. Okay, and they decide to draw lots to see who will tell the first tale, and the knight receives the honor. Knights opens the story. So first story is Knights. The Knight's Tale is a tale about 2 soldiers, Arcite and Palamon, Arcite, and Palamon, Palamon. Palamon. And these 2 fellows were captured in a battle, and they were imprisoned in Athens under the control of King Chaucer. Okay. While they were in prison in a tower, these 2 fellows came across Emily. They seen Emily, the sister of Queen Hippolyta, and fell instantly in love with her. In the first sight itself, these 2 fellows fell in love with her. The 2 guys, eventually leave prison separately. Okay, a friend of Arcite begs Theseus to release him, while Palamon later escapes. So Arcite was released by the prisoner, whereas Palamon got escaped from the prison. Okay, Arcite, who returns to the Athenian court disguised as a servant, because Arcite was released from the prison, but he was banished from Athens, and this fellow wanted to meet the Emily again, so he disguised himself as a servant and coming into the country. When Palamon escapes, he suddenly finds Arcite. So Palamon got escaped from the prison, and when he was coming back to the country to meet Emily, these 2 fellows met in a forest. Arcite and Palamon, they met in a forest. There they got into fight. They fight over Emily. Say, because 2 fellows are interested in Emily. Okay? But their fight was stopped when Theseus finds them. Theseus found them, and Theseus wanted to make an end for the fight. So Theseus set the rule for a duel between the 2 knights for Emily's affection. Each rise an army for a battle a year from that date. Okay? Before the battle, Arcite prays to Mars for victory in battle. Okay? Arcite prays to the Mars for a victory in battle, and there Emily prays to Diana that she may marry happily. Okay, Emily is thinking that I need my marriage to be done happily. That is what her problem. So she prays to Diana, and Palamon, the other side, that fellow prays to Venus. Okay, Venus, to have Emily as his wife. Okay, that's his prayer. All 3 gods hear their prayers and argue over who should get, precedence. But Saturn decides to meditate. During their battle, Arcite indeed is victorious, but as soon as he is crowned victor, he is killed. As Arcite expected, he won the battle, but he was killed end of the battle. before he dies, reconciles with Palamon and tells him that he deserves to marry Emily. Okay, before he dies, he told him that he deserves to marry Emily. Palamon, Emily got married. Okay, the knight has completed a story, and everybody was happy with the story. The next story was started by the Miller. Miller is a drunkard. Okay, the Drunken Miller who started the next story, and this story, a comic tale in which Nicholas, a student who lives with John the carpenter, okay, a student whose name is Nicholas, who was living with John carpenter, old man, okay, and there John's wife, she is much younger than John, okay, Alison is wife, John's wife, okay. Nicholas is staying with this family, and Nicholas, he was in love with John's wife, Alison. And there was another man, a courtly romantic person, Absalom. Okay, that fellow also was in love with Alison, John's wife. Nicholas, who contrives to sleep with Alison by telling John that flood equal to knows flood will come soon. The only way that Nicholas and Alison will survive is by staying in separate beds. See, that was a plan which was made by the Nicholas, because if both of them sleeping separately, he can have an affair with the John's wife Alison. That's why he said a flood will come. So both of you can't sleep together. You sleep separately. Both of you have to sleep individually in order to protect yourself. Okay, there Nicholas, finding the chances using the circumstances, Nicholas and Alison, they went to have a romance, but they are interrupted by Absalom, the another guy who was singing to Alison at her bedroom window. Absalom was begging for a kiss from Alison, but Alison didn't obey his words. She thrown him out. Okay. She humiliated Absalom and got a hot iron from the blacksmith and returned to Alison. This time Nicholas tried the same trick. The Absalom branded his backside. Nicholas shouted for water, awakening John. John woke up. He was sleeping separately, John, but when that fellow Absalom was screaming, John woke up, thinking that flood has come. Okay, John was thinking the flood has come. When he woke up, he was very hurry, and there, he cut the rope and came crashing through the floor of his house. After hearing the story, pilgrims have laughed heartily at this tale, but the Reeve takes offense, and Reeve wants to take revenge on Miller by giving, his stories. Now Reeve opens his stories, the Reeves. His story proclaims the story of dishonest Miller, who frequently cheated his clients, which included Cambridge College. Two Cambridge students, Aleyn, Aleyn, and John. Okay, these two Cambridge students went to the Miller to buy a meal and corn. So they went to purchase corn from the Miller. But while they were occupied, Simkine let their horses run free and stolen their corn. They were forced to stay with the Skimkine for the night. That particular night, Aleyn seduced the miller's daughter, Molly, while John seduced the miller's wife. There, thanks to a huge confusion of whose bed is who is in the dock, Aleyn tells Simkin of his exploits, thinking he is John, and the two they involved in fight. The miller's wife, awaking and thinking the devil had visited her, hit Simkin over the head with the staff, knocking him unconscious, and the two students escaped with the corn that Simkin had stolen. So the next story is the Cook's Tale. This one was intended to follow the Reeves' tale, but this tale only exists as a fragment. Following this tale, the Man of Law is the next one. Okay, which tells the story of Constance. So the Cook's Story is unfinished fragment, okay, which deals with the story of an apprentice cook whose name is Perkin, who lost his job because of his loose habits, and he lost his job, but he didn't bother about the job which he has lost. And there, his fellow moves with a like-minded friend whose wife is a prostitute. So now this story, Man of Law's Tale, which is proclaiming the story of Constance. She is the daughter of a Roman emperor who becomes engaged to Sultan of Syria on the condition that he converts to Christianity. Angered by his order to convert his country from Islam, the mother of Sultan assassinates her son, and Constance barely escapes. She is sent on a ship that lands in Britain, where she is taken in by the warden of a nearby castle and his wife. Both of them soon convert to Christianity upon meeting her. A young knight fell in love with Constance, but when she rejected him, that fellow murdered Dame Hermingild and attempted to frame Constance. However, when King Allah made the knights swear on the Bible that Constance murdered Hermingild, his eyes burnt, Constance marries King Allah and they have a son. His name is Mauritius, who is born when Allah is at war in Scotland. Lady Donegild contrives to have Constance banished by intercepting the letters between Allah and Constance and replacing them with false ones. Constance is thus sent away again, and on her voyage a ship comes across a Roman ship. A senator returns her to Rome, where nobody realizes that she is the daughter of the emperor. Eventually the King Allah makes a pilgrimage to Rome, where he meets Constance once more, and the Roman emperor realizes that Mauritius is his grandson and names him heir to the throne. Well, the next one is The Wife of Bath. Okay, this story opens with the story that a long dissertation on marriage, in which she recounts each of her 5 husbands. Her first 3 husbands were old men whom she would hector into providing for her, using guilt and refusal of her sexual favors. However, the final 2 husbands were younger men, more difficult to handle. The final husband, Jankin, was a 20-year-old of the wife of Bath's age, and he was more trouble as he refused to let the wife Bath dominate him, and often read literature that proposed that women be submissive. When she tore a page out of one of his books, Jankin struck her, causing her to be deaf in one ear. However, he felt so guilty at his action that from the point in the marriage, he was totally submissive to her. The Wife of Bath's Tale, it itself a story of a marriage dynamic, and it tells the story of a soldier, who as a punishment for raping a young woman, that fellow was sentenced to death. But he will be spared with a condition. He will be free from the punishment if he answer a question. The question is, what do women want? What is the most desired thing which women expect? So he has been roaming for the answers. Finally he met an old lady. She is the one who gave him right answer. But she took a promise from this fellow, saying that I'll give you the right answer, but you should marry me. He agreed for that, and he agreed for that. Finally he got the answer, and he was released from the punishment. When he comes back, she asked him to marry him. This fellow said, could you have any other options? She said, no, my only wish is to marry me. That is the only my wish which I'm having right now. So finally he accepted to marry her, the old lady. At the end, she said, how do you want me to be? You want me to be as a old lady or a beautiful young woman? He said, you decide among yourself. I don't want to take decision on this. I'm giving at your hand. You decide whatever you want. And finally she said she decided to be as a young woman forever. So the next story is The Friar, and it is about a summoner who while delivering summons for the church court, which comes across a traveling yeoman who eventually reveals himself to be the devil himself. The 2 share trade secretly, and there the devil tells him that they will meet again in hell if the summoner continues to pursue his trade. The summoner made a visit on an old woman and issues her a summons, then offers to accept. accept a Bible as a payment to prevent her excommunication. The old woman believes that she is without sin and curses the summoner. The devil then appears and casts the summoner into hell. So next, the host asks the clerk to narrate his story. Clerk is an expert student. Okay, the clerk's tale, which is recounts a story about Walter, an Italian marquis who finally decides to take a wife after the people of his province object to his long-term status as a bachelor. Okay. Walter, who got married Griseldi, okay, a low-born but was amazingly virtuous woman whom everybody loves. Everybody was in love with her. But Walter decided to test her devotion. When their first child, a daughter, was born, Walter tells her that his people are unhappy and wish for the child's death. He takes away the child to be murdered. Okay, he was taking his child to kill, but instead sends it to his sister to be raised. Okay, instead that he sent his daughter to his sister to raise her. He does the same with their next child, son. Finally, Walter tells Griseldi that the people demands that he divorce her. He sends her away from his home. Each of these tragedies Griseldi accepts with a great passions. Walter soon decided to make amends and sends for his two children. He tells Griseldi that he will marry again and introduces her to the presumed bride, whom he then reveals is their daughter. The family is reunited once more. The clerk ends with the advice that women should strive to be as steadfast as Griseldi, even if facing such adversity is unlikely and perhaps impossible. The merchant, who appreciates Griseldi for her steadfast character, but claims that his wife is far different from the virtuous woman of the clerk's story. Now the merchant opens his story of January was an elderly blind knight who decided to marry a young woman despite the objection of his brother. Okay, Placebo. January marries the young and beautiful May. Okay, January marries to the young and beautiful May. Then she soon become dissatisfied with his sexual attentions to her and decides to have an affair with his squire Damian. Okay? He has secretly married her by signs and tokens. When January and May are in their garden, May sneaks away to have a sex with Damian. The gods Pluto and Proserpina come upon Damian and May, and Pluto restores January's sight so that he may see what his wife is doing. When January sees what is occurring, May tells him not to believe his eyes. They are recovering from the blindness. And she believes her, leading to the surface happy ending. Now the squire opens the story, which is unfinished one. Okay, the squire's tale opens with the mysterious knight arriving at the court of Tartary. This knight who provides a king Cambuscan, a mechanical horse which can transport him anywhere around the globe and return him within a day. Further, he also offered him a Canassi, the daughter of Cambuscan, a mirror which can discern honesty and a ring which allows the wearer to know the language of animals and healing properties of all herbs. Canassi uses this ring to aid a bird who has been rejected in love. But the tale then abruptly ends. The tale was, ended immediately. It looks like an unfinished story. So the next, the Franklin story, the Franklin story, which narrates the marriage between the knights Arviragus and his wife Dorigen. Arviragus, 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 and his wife Dorigen, Doragen. When Arviragus travels on a military expedition, Dorigen laments his absence and fears that when he returns, a ship will be, wrecked upon the rocks of the shore. A young man, Aurelius, falls in love with her, but she refuses to return his favors. She agrees to have an affair with Aurelius only on the condition that he find a way to remove the rocks from the shore. A task she believes impossible. She thought, it is impossible task. And she told him, do this work, I'll have a relationship with you. Aurelius, who pays a scholar who creates the illusion that the rocks have disappeared. While Arviragus returns, Dorigen admits to her husband the promise that she had made the promise with him. Arviragus told her that, she must fulfill the promise. He sends her to have an affair with Aurelius, but she realizes the pain that it would cause Dorigen and does not make her fulfill the promise. The student in turn absolves Aurelius of this debt. The tale ends with a question: which of these men behaved most generously and nobly? So now the next one is the physician. Okay, the physician tale which tells the story of Virginius. Okay, a respected Roman knight whose daughter Virginia. Okay, and she was an incomparable beauty, very beautiful one. Appius, the judge who governed his town, okay, who lusted after Virginia and collaborated with the Claudius, who claimed in court that Virginia was his slave and Virginius had stolen her. Appius orders that Virginia be handed over to him. Virginius, knowing that Appius and Claudius did this in order to rape his daughter, instead gave her a choice between death or dishonor. There she chose the death, and Virginius chops off his daughter's head, which he brings to Appius and Claudius. The people were so shocked by this that they realized that Appius and Claudius were frauds. Appius was jailed and committed suicide, while Claudius was banished. The next one is the pardoner. The pardoner who opens his tale with an elaborate confession about the deceptive nature of his profession. He narrates the secrets of his trade, including the presentations of useless items as saints' relics. The pardoner's tale consists three rioters who search for death to vanquish him. They find an old man who tells them that they would find death under the nearby tree. But under this tree, they only find a large fortune. Two of the rioters send the third into town to purchase food and drink for the night. And while he is gone, they plan to murder him. The third rioter poisons the drink, intending to take all of the money for himself. When he returns, the two rioters stab him, then drink the poisoned wine and die themselves. The three rioters thus find death in the form of avarice. The pardoner ends his tale with a diatribe against sin, imploring the travelers to pay him for pardons and be absolved. But the host berates him, scatologically into silence. So the next story is, the shipman story. This story is of, there are thrifty merchant and his wife, the wife tells a monk, the merchant's close friend, that she is unhappy in her marriage and asks if she might be borrowed 100 francs of his. In return for the loan, she agrees she will sleep with him. The monk then borrows the money from the merchant himself, sleeps with his wife, and pays her husband's money. When the merchant asks for his money back, the monk tells him he gave it to the wife. And when the merchant confronts his wife, the wife simply tells him that she will repay the debt to her husband's in bed. Now the next one is the prayeress. This story, narrates the story of a young Christian child who lives in a town in Asia that was dominated by vicious Jewish population. One child learned the Alma Redemptoris song praising the Virgin Mary and traveled home from the school singing it. The Jews, angry at his behavior, took the child and slit his throat, leaving him in a cesspit to die. The boy's mother searched frantically for her son. When she found him, she was not yet dead, for the Virgin Mary had placed a grain on his tongue that would allow him to speak until it was removed. And this story was ended with a lament for a young boy and a curse for the Jews who perpetrated the heinous crime. Now Chaucer opens his story, the tale of Sir Thopas, a florid and fantastical poem in rhyming couplets that serves only to annoy the other pilgrims. And the host interrupts Chaucer shortly into this tale and tells him to tell another. The host was not happy with the story of Chaucer, so he insisted Chaucer to give another story. Then Chaucer, narrated a story of Melibea, one of two tales, which is in prose, which is in prose form. The other one is peasant tale. So this tale is about Melibea, a powerful ruler whose enemies attack his family when deciding whether to declare war on his enemies. His wife, who advises him to be merciful, and they engage in a long debate over the appropriate course of action. Melibea finally gives his enemies the option that they can receive a sentence either from him or from his wife. They submit to Melibea's judgment, and he intends to disinherit and banish the perpetrators. However, he eventually submits to his wife's plea for mercy. The next one is the monk. Monk tale is not a narrative tale at all, but instead of an account of various historical and literary figures who experience of all from grace. These include Adam, Salmon, Hercules, King Pedro of Spain, and Bernabo Visconti, Nero, Julius Caesar, and Christ. The knight interrupts the monk's tale, finding his listing of historical tragedies monotonous and depressing. This one was, baked up by host. The nun's priest tale, the next one, which is the story of a rooster, Chanticleer, and the hen, Petilote. Chanticleer was ill, Chanticleer, Chanticleer. She was ill one night and had a disturbing dream that he was chased by a fox. He feared this dream was prophetic, but Petiolate assured him that this dream merely stemmed from his imbalanced humors and that should find herbs to cure himself. Chanticleer insisted that dreams are signifiers, but finally agreed with his wife. However, Chanticleer is indeed chased by a fox and carried off, but is saved when he tricks the fox into opening his mouth, allowing Chanticleer to fly away. So the next story is the second nuns. Second nun story. It's a biography of a Saint Cecilia, who converts her husband and brother to Christianity during the time of Roman Empire, when Christian beliefs were illegal. Her brother and husband are executed for their beliefs, and she herself is cut 3 times with a sword during her execution, but does not immediately die. Rather, She lingers on for several more days. During the time, she orders that her property be distributed to the poor people after her death. Upon her death, the Pope Urban, who declared her as a saint. See, when the story second nun got over, there a canon is alchemist canon and his yeoman who joined the band of travelers. That the canon had heard how they are telling the tales, and he was also wanted to join them. The yeoman speaks incessantly about the canon, praising him hugely, but then retracts his praise, annoying the canon, who suddenly departs. The canon, canon's Yaman story is about, the work of a canon and the means by which they defraud people by making them think that, they can duplicate money. So now the host who insisted the cook to narrate one more story, but he was drunken heavily who couldn't narrate the story. So now the Mancipal who got a turn to narrate the story. The Mancipal story is a story how Phoebus, Phoebus, when he assumed mortal form as a jealous husband, he monitored his wife closely, fearing that she would be unfaithful. Phoebus had a white crow that can speak the language of humans and can also sing beautiful songs. When the white crow learns that Phoebus' wife was unfaithful, Phoebus, plucked him of his feathers and throw him out of the doors. And according to the Mancipal, this is how crows are black and can only sing an unpleasant tone. So the next story is the parson. So the parson who narrates the final story, the parson tale is not a narrative tale at all, but it's an extended sermon on the nature of a sin and the three parts of necessary for forgiveness, such as contrition, confession, and satisfaction. The story gives an example of 7 deadly sins and explains them, and also details of what is necessary for redemptions. Chaucer ends the tale with the retraction, asking those who have offended by the tales to blame his rough manner and lack of education. For his intention were not immoral, while asking those who found something redeemable in the tale to give credit to Christ. Well, that's it about the Canterbury Tales. Thank you so much for watching. Do subscribe my YouTube channel.